all started when I was hired for a haunted attraction. It's called Miss Amelia's House. This particular attraction was based on a true story. Back in the 1990s, there was a single mother named Edna. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Amelia. Edna worshipped Amelia. She loved her so much that she somehow developed the habit of calling her Miss Amelia. One day, the family took a plane to visit Edna's parents. Sadly, the aircraft crashed and Amelia didn't survive. Edna refused to leave her house and cried in her room for hours at a time. This went on for weeks until Edna finally left the house. It seemed that Edna had moved on from the tragedy. When a neighbor walked past Edna's place, he noticed something through one of the windows. Edna was sitting at her dining room table talking to someone. Curious, the neighbor decided to see who it was. What he saw baffled him. Sitting in the chair opposite from Edna was a doll. What made it creepy was that the doll looked precisely like Amelia. It even wore the same pink dress she wore when she died. Edna conversed with the doll as if it were her late daughter. Soon, everyone in town found out about Edna's insanity. Edna was taken to a psych ward. She lived there for a few months until she died one night. Some believed that Edna died of a broken heart. The story never explained what happened to the doll. I don't even know how my employer found it. All I can say is that the doll became part of the attraction. And let me tell you, the years had not been kind to it. The attraction was designed to look like Edna's old house, but scarier. Cobwebs, damaged walls, blood splatters, the works. The final room of the attraction was designed to look like Amelia's bedroom. The doll was laid on the bed with me sitting next to it. My job was to be Amelia's ghost. My character looked like her, but with a more zombie-like appearance. All I had to do was wait for patrons to show up in my area and jump out at them. When the attraction closed in November, I thought I'd never see that hideous doll again. But when I got up the next morning, I found it in my bed next to me. I was so scared that I fell off the bed. I stood up and stared at the thing in disbelief. I should mention that I have a roommate who worked in the same theme park as me. Her name is Grace. I figured Grace had stolen the doll and placed it in my bed while I was sleeping. I grabbed the doll and barged into Grace's room. You see, my roommate tends to pull dumb pranks sometimes. Being the non-morning person she was, Grace was still asleep. I asked what her problem was and threw the doll onto her bed. My outburst jolted Grace awake. She then flinched when she saw the doll on her bed. Grace asked me what was with the doll. I told Grace I knew she got the doll from Miss Amelia's house and stole it to scare me. Grace said that she had no idea what I was talking about. While we were arguing, the bedroom door slammed shut behind me, startling us both. I then heard what sounded like a child sniffling in the hallway outside. I opened the door and the sniffling stopped. I looked out in the hallway but didn't see anything. I wondered if it was my imagination when Grace called my name. She held up the doll and I saw what was bothering her. The doll's face was wet. It looked as if it had just cried. Terrified, Grace and I threw the doll in the trash. Lucky for us, the dumpster truck was coming the next day. We thought that would be the end of it, but 3 days later, we found the same doll on our couch. Neither of us could explain the doll's reappearance. By then, I was sure that Grace wasn't responsible. Jokester or not, even she wouldn't keep something up for this long. Suddenly, I heard the sobbing again. This time, Grace and I saw the doll crying. I then heard a faint voice asking where her mom was. I felt my heart sink as I realized it was coming from the doll. Grace grabbed the doll and then bolted out of our apartment. I ran after her, wondering what she was doing. But then I saw her get into her car and drive off. I tried to call her, but she wouldn't pick up. I was returning to our apartment when I ran into Mrs. Rose, one of our neighbors. She saw Grace running and asked if everything was okay. I told Mrs. Rose what had happened. I didn't expect Mrs. Rose to believe me, but after hearing my story, she told me something I never would have anticipated. Well, our building was built where Edna and Amelia's house used to be, Mrs. Rose said. My neighbor could tell from my baffled expression that I had no idea what she was talking about. It turned out that after Edna's death, her house was put up for sale. Within 5 years, 8 different families resided in the home. Each one claimed to be haunted by a child's ghost. The last family had a daughter around Amelia's age. Somehow, she found the Miss Amelia doll. The parents tried to get rid of the doll, but for some reason, it always reappeared in the house. The daughter told her parents that Miss Amelia was looking for her mom. Before moving away, the family sold the doll to a theme park. That was the same one I worked at. I think the doll didn't return earlier because nobody has lived in the house since. When the real estate agency failed to sell the house again, the city decided to replace it with an apartment building. I guess Amelia's ghost knew I lived where her home used to be and followed me back to my apartment. Mrs. Rose suggested that Amelia only haunted my place because it was where her bedroom was located. Amelia's house had only 1 floor. My apartment also happened to be on the ground level. Mrs. Rose also figured nobody lived in my apartment before Grace and me. There's no way to prove whether my neighbor was correct or not. Regardless, I had to figure out how to get rid of Miss Amelia. Finally, Grace called me back. She said that she took the Miss Amelia doll to a psychic. According to the psychic, we had to take the Miss Amelia doll to Edna. Only then could Amelia's soul finally rest. There were 2 problems with that. First off, I never believed in psychics. And second, Edna is dead. Grace suggested that we take the Miss Amelia doll to Edna's grave. Since we had nothing to lose, I agreed to Grace's plan. I won't bore you with how we managed to find Edna's grave. When we did, I placed the doll in front of the tombstone. I then heard a child's giggle and something caught my eye. A woman and young girl walked away hand in hand before disappearing into nothingness. I don't know if anyone will believe my story, but all that matters is that Amelia is with her mom again.